It's time for Physician Family Finances, the show where physician moms and dads like you can get the answers and encouragement you need to turn a good earned income into great life outcomes for tomorrow and today.
Hello, physician moms and dads. I'm Reineke, certified financial planner and primary advisor.
And I'm Chelsea Jones, also a certified financial planner and primary advisor here at Physician Family Financial Advisors.
Chelsea, have you ever wondered how stocks and pizza have in common?
No, but I feel like you're going to tell me.
Yeah, we're about to find out. I'm sure our listeners are on the edge of their seats.
That's
All right,
right.
we're going to do asking for a friend, and I'm going to bring it home here with the pizza analogy.
Right. So asking for a friend question this week, pretty straightforward, but we're going to get into the pizza. What is a stock?
What is a stock? Okay, so by the way, I don't know if I've told our listeners this before, but I'm obsessed with pizza. Always have been, always will be. It's the best food on earth. I cannot be argued against it. But a stock is a tiny slice of a company. So when you buy one slice of pizza, it's like you own just a little bit of that pizza. But there's a whole pie, right? So you own just a little bit of the bigger thing. And if you buy a single share of a stock, like you buy a single share of Apple or Nike, you literally own a fractional percentage of that company. So tiny, tiny, tiny slice. So when that company makes money, you make money because as companies make more and more money, the value of your share or your fractional share, it goes up, it goes up. And when that company loses money, or even if that company makes less than you expected or people who bought into the company expected, the value of your share might go down. Okay? And then you can sell your share, and if it goes up, you made money. If it's down after you sold it, you lost money. But even further than that, because it still seems like monopoly money to a lot of people, and I'm sure for asking for a friend, it's coming from someone who doesn't quite understand this stuff. I thought maybe they would be interested in knowing, like, why do people sell stocks? Why do companies create stocks for you to buy? So imagine you are starting a pizza shop, okay, and you could kind of bootstrap and like scratch and claw your way to opening up one single pizza shop in your town, right? So you owe rent, you got to buy the supplies, you got to do all that stuff, and you work your way up to a successful pizza joint. But it's so successful that you decide, I should do this in all 50 states. I want to open up 49 more pizza shops. Well, you're going to need a lot more money than starting that single pizza shop that was so successful. So you can either take a loan, which would be a really big loan, and it would put pressure on your business because you have to pay back that loan, right? So it's hard to do. Or you can sell a piece of your company. And that's all they're doing to raise capital so that they can expand their business, or to just cash in on some of their business and hopefully continue to grow it. They issue stock, which is just like saying a big chunk of this company is up for sale, and then the market decides on what they're going to pay. And when they do that initial sale, they get the money, and then the shares of the company kind of trade on the open market. Even further than that, buying into a single business or any business has risks. So this is why stocks are risky, because if that pizza shop goes under, or the operator in the pizza shop just was like, man, they were really good at running a tiny pizza shop, but they're not very good at running a national brand. Well, that business could go under. So let's say they got, $1 million that they needed to start their pizza shops, and they just burnt it. Like, they weren't good at operating a business that large. It could go bankrupt and your stock would be worthless. This is why picking one single stock or a few single stocks is riskier than buying a whole bunch of stocks. So if you buy a tiny little bit of a company and you do that thousands of times, the likelihood that the entire economy is going to go completely bankrupt is pretty low. But it goes up and down. Sometimes stocks or businesses that you invested in do better than you thought. Sometimes ones that you thought were going to do great do a little bit worse. But at the end of the day, it kind of smooths out your ride to diversify your money into all these different businesses. So I point that out because while stocks feel like this imaginary thing out there, it's really just buying into businesses, a whole bunch of them. And when you feel like you're not diversified because you have one like position in your portfolio that says like VTI, or it's the index fund that buys into thousands of businesses, that is highly diversified in stocks within the stock world. So you have a bunch of businesses that all are in different industries that sell different things that, you know, have different sets of like cash flow. Some are growing and some are sort of staying the same, but they spit out a lot of money. It's all sorts of different businesses that you're buying into when you buy into a big giant index fund. So that's how we connect pizza and stocks.
Right, very good. Our first regular question comes from an internal medicine doctor in Oregon. They said if we make a $125,000 contribution to our child's 529 account, will we owe gift taxes? So this is gift taxes is something that usually just comes up with 529 contributions, or if for retirees who are thinking about giving money away. But this is specifically asking about 529 contributions. And if you didn't already know, a contribution to a 529 is considered a completed gift to the beneficiary. So usually to your child. So they're asking, if I make this big contribution, will I owe gift taxes? Because I hear about all these gift taxes, but I don't really know what that means. And basically, the short answer is probably not immediately. Most people actually never pay a gift tax because there's two exemption amounts that apply. So there's the annual exemption amount that the IRS sets every year. So it's $19,000 per person this year. So a married couple can give $38,000, 19 times 2, to any single person and not have to do any filing, no taxes owed. It's just you can give away $38,000 a year, however many times you want, as long as it's to different people.
Mm-hmm.
But if you make a larger contribution like this, which means a larger gift, there are a couple ways you could go about it. So one, you can elect a 5-year forward averaging on your tax return. So what that does is it takes this $125,000 lump sum contribution, and on your return, it's going to look like you made a $5,000 or 125 divided by 5. That number contribution
Mm-hmm.
for the next 5 years.
25K.
That's a 25,000.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
on
you
your
spread it
return,
out.
You spread it out.
Okay.
And 25,000 is under the 38,000, that annual exemption amount, and so there's really no tax consequence. If you
There's some
don't
tax
elect,
paperwork.
yeah, tax
The
paperwork.
consequence is just paperwork, but you're not going to run
Owe
into any
money.
issues.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other way you could go about it is to not elect the 5-year forward averaging, in which case you still most likely wouldn't owe any gift tax, because making whatever the contribution amount is above the annual exemption amount, it would just reduce your federal lifetime exemption, which, right now it's fairly high. It's like 15 million per person. So a married couple, 30 million. And so yeah, you would just reduce your $15 million exemption to 14.99 something. You just reduce it by a little less than 100,000.
It's
And so
important to say too, when we talk about this, we're talking about federal
Yep,
gift
the
tax,
federals.
because obviously states have their own
Mm-hmm.
rules, but federally it's really hard for physicians. I have met a couple, but they are very unique to ever get beyond that $30 million limit. Now I will say that it's best practice to do the 5-year forward averaging. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a lot more valuable to get the money into the 529 than it is to worry about your estate taxes in this case. But if you want to do the 5-year forward averaging, then that would protect you from someday, if that limit changes, even though it's, I'm putting my fingers up in quotes for our podcast listeners, in the law that is $30 million, if you can avoid having to go against your limit, then you probably should. It's easy enough.
Yep, because either way, a gift tax form is going to be filed, whether you elect 5-year forward averaging or elect to just reduce your lifetime exemption amount. The same form needs to be filled out.
Mm-hmm.
So you might as well fill out or choose the option that doesn't reduce your exemption amount. One thing to note about the 5-year forward averaging before we move on to the next question is it does use up your annual exclusion amount for the next 5 years. So if the annual limit goes up next year from 38 combined to 40, you can contribute 2,000 no problem and not have to file any more paperwork. But if you contribute more than that, you'll have to go back to the gift tax return. And in that case, since you already used up your annual exclusion amount and your 5-year forward averaging option, you would be reducing your lifetime exemption if you
Yeah.
gifted more. So
Yeah, we have
just keep
written
that in mind.
yeah, we've written hundreds of these plans, and I can say, just, for the people that are listening that we've written plans for, there are plenty of times where we have blown past the limit, knowingly blown past the limit, and it's like, it's okay. They're probably not at a big risk of paying any estate taxes. But just remember that, there's something to be said for the tax-free growth in a 529, and that being more valuable than preserving every dollar of your estate tax. So getting this money in there, getting college paid for is a lot more meaningful than protecting a few bucks from estate taxes 50 years from now. But if you can avoid it, there's no reason not to.
Exactly.
So there's times where breaking that rule is okay, or it's not really breaking a rule, but going past that limit is probably advisable.
Okay, so our next question comes from a double doctor family in Texas. They said, we're currently renting, but want to buy a home in the near future. We also have about $150,000 of federal student loans and are not pursuing PSLF. Should we use extra cash to save for a down payment, or should we pay off our loans quicker?
Man, the answer is so clear in my mind, but it doesn't mean that you don't have to sit down and like do some math and be tactical about this. But here's the big picture. The big picture is you're going to have to buy a house, you're going to have to pay off your student loans. You should do both, and you'll feel better if you do both a little faster than maybe exactly what the math says. So, waiting to buy a house, waiting to clear your loans to buy a house, I don't generally see that get people much further than just buying a house. But we've been in an environment with houses, at least for in the last 10 years, most years houses have gone up in value. We've seen a little bit of that kind of correcting itself in the last couple of years. But I think the number one thing here is just to look at cash flow. You can buy this house with student loans if your cash flow allows it. And that means you are saving appropriately for retirement, you're saving appropriately for college, you're paying your student loans off at a good clip. 5-7 years is reasonable for most young physicians. Double doctor family with $150,000 in student loans. The lowest they could be making, unless someone's part-time, is $500,000 a year. This is a very reasonable amount of student loans. I hate to say that. I know 6 figures in loans is so painful to hear, but I just see people succeed with this amount of student loans all the time. But getting down into the details of this, interest rates on loans range from 4 to 6. Your mortgage will be above 6 at this very moment. A lot of your mortgage interest can probably be written off on your taxes. So the average here, 4 to 6 on student loans, above 6 on a mortgage, but you get to deduct the interest most likely if you're itemizing. The average here, let's call it a wash. It's the same interest rate. Okay.
Yeah, because I think they would make too much to deduct student loan interest, right?
Student loan interest, they make too much. And there's some rules about how much you can. Anyways, let's call it a wash.
Yeah.
All right. So putting 20% down on your first house, not totally necessary, very difficult to do quickly if you also want to pay down student loans. So finding a balance between like how quickly can I pay these off, even if I buy a house, and do I have the cash flow to support it is the answer. But the big one here, because I did all of that, by the way, all those caveats for this little statement, which is I hate to tell people not to pay down their student loans, but you need cash when you buy a house. You need some cash. I don't care if you're putting 20% down or you're putting 5% down. You're going to buy a couch. You're going to paint the walls. Something's going to break. So, I mean, you need some cash.
Yeah. Which
And
don't
I
even
know
get me
this.
started on how much paint costs.
Yeah,
I talked to you about it the other day.
we just talked about that in the huddle this week. So I know this because I bought a house. I think I was, how old was I? 23? With no money. Like, no money. Somehow I got into a house with no money. And every time something broke, I had no money and I was fixing it myself. And I do not wish that upon any MD or DO. Okay.
Right.
So, I mean, I was like replacing, I mean, that tells you what kind of house I was in, but in my shower, rather than having a fan, there was just a window in the shower, which was, of course, rotted immediately. And because of all the steam. So I am out there not knowing what I'm doing, replacing windows, you know, cleaning out fireplaces. I'm doing all this stuff because I have no money. And that's just not the position you're in. You're not 23-year-old Nate just
Right.
grinding away, right? You need some cash. I also sat on IKEA furniture for, if you don't want to live like that, you need some money. And I know you won't live like that. So you should have some money rather than putting it on debt. So build up some cash. That's like, probably 5% down. Build up an emergency fund. And once you have that, you have a choice to make about like, do we wait even longer or while we're paying off our student loans? But typically at that point, you could go buy a house as long as your cash flow supports it.
Okay. Our last question comes from an anesthesiologist in Oklahoma. They said, "My parents just bought an annuity right before retirement. What is an annuity? What
What
even
is
is it?"
an annuity? Man,
Which is,
we don't talk about annuities a lot, but I'll let you take this one.
yeah, people hear annuity and kind of get the ick a little bit if
Mm-hmm.
you're, I don't know, if you're introduced outside of like the insurance world, I guess, or even in it sometimes. But annuities, they're not inherently bad. They're a match for the right person. It's just usually not a match for doctors unless it's a very specific case. But in general, what an annuity is you take a lump sum of money, you give it to an insurance company, and they guarantee you a set amount of income for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Which is
So
nice, right? Like
it is nice.
if you are 80 years old and you are worried about running out of money
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have like enough to withdraw, there's the 4% rule, the five, maybe you're 80, you can go to 5% or 6%. If you're
Mm-hmm.
withdrawing 6% and that just doesn't feel like enough and you're worried about your running out of money, like you might want that guarantee.
Yeah, because it is a guarantee for the rest of your life. They're going to pay you an income for the rest of your life. Usually it doesn't have a cost of living adjustment, but I'm sure you could add it on. It would just cost you more money because guaranteed anything costs money. It's not going to be free.
Yeah.
So annuities do typically have higher fees, especially compared to, something that's not guaranteed, like a brokerage account. But it does give you that peace of mind that you won't run out of money. You're limited to your annuity paycheck in that case, but you're not going to run out. That paycheck's still going to be there for the rest of your life. And because it's guaranteed, you're not feeling the ups and downs of the market. Because the
That's right.
alternative would be your money is invested and you're withdrawing a certain amount each year. So you're not growing your money, but it's also not shrinking. So giving lump sum to an insurance company, they give you a set amount of money for the rest of your life. And one thing that most people don't realize about annuities that's different from a brokerage account or some other investment account is once you pass, the annuity is gone. It's not something that your children or any beneficiaries can inherit. So that's something to keep in mind too if you're, considering this as an option for retirement income.
Yeah.
But
Let me That is true. And I think that's where people get the like shock. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. But if you are an astute investor, which most people are not, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you would, something would feel off if they didn't keep the money. And here's why. Let's say you bought an annuity. Let's say you had $500,000 and that wasn't enough to draw, what 6% of that a year. That's an aggressive withdrawal rate, is $30,000 a year. And that wasn't enough to pay your bills. And then you go to insurance company and they say, well, we'll pay you $60,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
We'll pay you more than 10% every year out in payments for the rest of your life. And you think that's a great deal. Well, why would they do that? They're doing that. They're paying you more because they're taking a risk that you will outlive this contract. Like if they're doing the math and like you'll probably die at 91, but you live to 100, they will have probably lost money,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, but they're insurance companies. They have a lot of data. They know probably when you're going to die,
Yeah.
and
Statistically, at least.
statistically, and they're banking on you dying on, like on the average, and so they will get to keep what's left. Not all of it. You didn't pay $500,000 and they get to keep $500,000. You paid
Right.
$500,000 and they get to keep what is left. So
Mm-hmm.
they go through all this analysis and they decide what's amount that they can stomach to pay you for it, and you take no risk. They take all the risk. You're transferring risk, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why they keep the money at the end. So no inheritance. That's a con of an annuity.
Yeah. But if you were worried about running out of money, there might not have been an inheritance anyway.
Exactly. Exactly. Let me say too that because I was the one who got this question. Even if they aren't going to run out of money, but your parents don't have a quality financial advisor who can explain to them going through like withdrawal rates, and they're not
Mm-hmm.
used to having a lot of money in stocks. For this family, their parents took a chunk of their money, not all of their money, but a chunk
Not
of
all
their
of it.
money, and
Yep.
guaranteed that still had money on the side. I personally don't think that, I mean, they probably had enough to just take a reasonable withdrawal rate and not pay the high fees of an annuity.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to say. They
Yeah.
they might they may not take enough risk in the stock market to keep up. And that means that if their nest egg is going down because they're withdrawing from the money, that means their income would go down. If they're not in enough stocks because they're nervous about the stock market, then 1 year they might make $30,000, and the next year a financial advisor might tell them, hey, like you can only afford to take 28. Cost of
Mm-hmm.
living went up, your income went down. So this is right for some people. It's just that if you're preparing for 30 years as a physician, you're saving a ton of money, you're preparing to not have to pay for a high cost annuity. There's a couple more cons. Do you want to go over those?
Yeah. So some other cons with annuities, we've already talked about the high fees. I already mentioned the slower growth. You're not
Yeah.
feeling the ups and downs of the market, but
Yeah, well, there is no growth really.
there is no growth.
I mean, there's different types. Again, we don't sell this stuff. We don't generally recommend this stuff. There is about 100 different kinds of annuities. We're talking
Yeah.
like the basics. You buy an
Yeah.
annuity, an immediate fixed annuity. The second you
Mm-hmm.
give them the money, they start paying you cash. It's just what you get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So no growth or slower growth because of the
Mm-hmm.
fees or because of the amount of risk that you're taking because you're transferring it. And then the last one is that it's not liquid. Like you have your
Yeah,
stream of income, but you can't just take, a couple years of the income and say, "Oh, I want my remaining $400,000 back."
right.
It's locked in to
Yeah,
the insurance contract or the annuity contract. So it's liquid in the sense that you get your income every month consistently, but it's not liquid in a sense where you can just take a bigger chunk out at any time.
yeah. It's the typical fixed. We're on a fixed income. So how many times do we write plans where physicians are like, in this year of retirement, I want to take $100,000 out to pay for a wedding. Or in this year in retirement, I want to travel, like do this very big travel year that's going to cost $100,000. It's just once. Well, if your parents have an annuity and that's all they have, annuity plus Social Security, they can't do that. But this is an entirely different situation that they're in. If someone should buy an annuity, like if it's an advisable thing to do, they never had that money anyways. They didn't have $100,000 of extra money. I mean, we're talking about 500 grand. They can't just take 20% of their money and go spend it in a given year. So this is in a nutshell. When you're thinking about annuities and your parents, you hear your parents' advisor sold them one or wants to sell them one, it is an allowance. It is just an allowance, and it's expensive because they transferred the risk to somebody else. That's what it is. And sometimes it being expensive is okay. For any one of our clients, if you've prepared, which we get physicians in here that are right when they're starting or they're in their 40s, I mean, they're preparing. If you've prepared well enough, you don't have to pay the pay for transferring the risk, and your children will get to inherit what's left. So, a lot of the families we serve care a lot about their children at least inheriting something, and annuities won't get you that typically. But it's a classic case of they are right for some people, they're just oversold.
Yeah. They're not right for at least most physicians, like you said, because you have the means to prepare well in advance to not have to transfer the risk.
That's right. Okay, that is it for today. Thank you everybody for listening. If you liked this episode, please be sure to subscribe. You can schedule an interview with us if you'd like to work with us at physicianfamily.com, or you can send us questions. We'll answer here right on the show at podcast@physicianfamily.com. Until next time, remember, you're not just making a living, you're making a life.
Are you ready to turn worries about taxes and investing into a plan for college and retirement? If you're evaluating your options and want to learn more, visit physicianfamily.com and click Get Started. Or you can ask a question of your own by emailing podcast@physicianfamily.com. See marketing disclosures at physicianfamily.com/disclosures.